Before you scroll, let me tell you something you didn't expect to hear today. I died, and who I saw in heaven was not who I expected. This story isn't fiction. It's not to entertain or scare you. This is something that changed everything I ever believed. I'm sharing this now because I believe you were meant to hear it. If you've lost someone, questioned eternity, or wondered if heaven is real, this message will speak to something deep in your spirit. Please stay. Part 1. The moment it happened. I didn't know that morning would be my last. Nothing felt different until everything did. I remember a sudden stillness. My body collapsed, but I was completely aware. Then a pull. Not down, not sideways. Upward. There was no pain. Only a peaceful detachment. And then light. But not like sunlight. It was alive, pure, overflowing with intelligence and love. I was being taken, escorted by what felt like angels, though their presence was less about wings and more about energy, clarity, divine purpose. As I moved, I began to see things, colors, sounds, even feelings I didn't know existed on Earth. And then I arrived. Part 2, who I saw. You think you know who you'll see first in heaven. I thought it would be Jesus, and yes, eventually I did. But the first soul I encountered was someone I hadn't forgiven, someone I had held bitterness toward for years. They smiled. No shame, no awkwardness, just a deep, healing knowing between us. They were whole, transformed, radiant in a way no human eye could fully perceive. And suddenly I understood. Heaven doesn't carry old wounds. Here, love truly conquered all, and forgiveness was the only language spoken. They held my hand, and without words, I felt everything I had needed to feel my whole life. Peace, purpose, wholeness, like my soul had always known this place, and I had just returned. Then came others, family members, strangers, even a child I had lost in pregnancy but never met. They were all there, recognizing me, celebrating me. And then I felt it, a presence, larger than the sky, deeper than the ocean. Part 3, when I saw Jesus. And there he was. No one introduced him. I didn't need to ask. My soul instantly knew. Jesus. Not the painted version. Not the one from movies or church statues, but the living light itself. His eyes didn't just see me, they knew me. Every memory, every fear, every tear, every failure. And yet, he loved me, entirely, eternally, without hesitation. He didn't speak with words, but I heard him clearly. You've always been mine. At that moment, everything made sense. Every pain, every delay, every loss, every answered and unanswered prayer. Heaven wasn't about escape. It was about becoming who I was always meant to be, in him. Part 4, why I came back. But then, it was over. A whisper said, "It's not your time." And just like that, I was back. In my body, in the hospital, beeping machines. Part 2, the moment heaven became real. Time didn't move the same way there. I didn't feel minutes or hours, just moments of overwhelming presence. Everything had purpose. Every light shimmered with meaning. Even silence felt holy. I was not dreaming. This was not a hallucination. This was more real than anything I'd ever experienced. I remember being aware of myself, but not in a physical way. No body, no weight, no illness. Just my soul unchained, free, unburdened. I began to move not by walking, but by knowing. When I desired to go somewhere, I simply was there. I moved toward a garden, if you can even call it that. It looked like Eden. Living colors, harmonies of life, every blade of grass radiant with worship. But I wasn't alone. There were others. Some I recognized, some I didn't, but I felt them. I felt their joy, their purity, their stories wrapped in light. There were children dancing, laughing. Some had never been born into the world, but lived fully here. There were elders, wise still, but restored in a way no age could define. Their eyes sparkled like they had seen the beginning and the end and were at peace with both. And then suddenly, I understood something that stopped me cold. No one here was judging me. Not one soul looked at me with shame, suspicion, or comparison. There was no ego, no pretending, just being fully known and fully loved. A voice that changed everything. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't loud, but it pierced deeper than sound. A voice that vibrated inside my spirit. "You are mine." I turned, expecting to see the face behind the voice. And there he was again, Jesus, but closer this time. Not as a distant presence, but as a king, a brother, a savior. He didn't wear a crown, yet he was the crown. He didn't speak English, but I understood him more clearly than words. I fell. Not physically because I had no body, but I fell into him, into every memory he knew, into every question he already answered, into a love that burned but didn't destroy, that purified without condemnation. And in that moment, I didn't think of earthly things, not my job, not my bank account, not my achievements, not my regrets. I thought of one thing. Why didn't I live like this was real? I had believed in Jesus before. I went to church, I prayed. But this was different. This was the person behind every prayer, the presence behind every moment of silence, the reason I was still breathing until I wasn't. What Jesus showed me next will stay with me forever. Jesus extended his hand, not because I needed to be led, but because he wanted me to know I belonged. He showed me a glimpse of my life, but not like a movie. It was more like threads, a tapestry. Every moment of pain, every betrayal I cried through, every prayer I whispered in the dark that I thought no one heard. He showed me how he had woven it all into something beautiful. He never wasted my pain, and he said something I'll never forget. Part 3, the return, and the weight of the message stay in that moment forever. Standing there with him. Time didn't just feel different, it stopped mattering. There was no urgency. No next, just presence. And this overwhelming feeling that everything I ever searched for was always him. But then I felt something shift. Not around me, within me. A subtle pull, like my spirit was being drawn gently back through a thin veil. And I realized, this isn't the end. You're not staying here. Not yet. I didn't want to go. Can I say that honestly? I didn't want to go back to a world filled with noise, pain, confusion. I had finally tasted home, and now I was being asked to leave it behind. But Jesus looked at me, not with sadness, but with a knowing, as if to say, you must go back and live like you've been here. You must carry this light. You've seen the truth now, and the world needs it. He never forced me. He never used fear. He simply held me with his eyes and let love be enough to send me. I knew I had to return. Descending into flesh again, suddenly, I felt weight. I felt gravity. I felt pain. It was like crashing into a body hour, one that was breaking, one that couldn't contain the light I had just experienced. My first thought as I opened my eyes, tears, not from sadness, but from the memory of what I had just left. People around me were crying too. I had flatlined, and now I was breathing again. But I wasn't the same person. I couldn't be. The afterglow of heaven. I started to see people differently. Even strangers on the street carried something eternal. Every small act of love, every child's laugh, every hug, every whisper of hope, all of it mattered. And I wanted to tell everyone, you have no idea how real this is. Heaven is not a metaphor. Eternity is not a distant thought. Jesus is not a story. He's a presence, a heartbeat, a king who knows your name. I didn't come back with fame or fortune, but I came back with a fire and a message I would give my life to share. Don't waste your time on things that don't last. Pursue what is eternal. Let your life echo in heaven. Final part, what Jesus told me about your life and why you're reading this now. If you've made it this far, I need you to pause. Take a breath. Because what I'm about to say isn't just a story, it's a message meant for your soul. When I stood in that presence, in that overwhelming flood of divine love, I realized something that shook me to my core. God hasn't forgotten about you. He knows exactly who you are. He sees you when you cry in silence. He hears the questions you're too afraid to ask. And yes, he feels the ache in your chest when you wonder if you're enough. As I was sent back to this world, I didn't hear a booming voice or dramatic decree, but I felt it deep in my soul. It was like God was placing this truth inside me, and it was meant for someone watching right now. Maybe that's you. Tell them they still matter. Tell them they were born for this time. Tell them their story isn't over. That's you. You haven't missed it. You're not behind. You're not too far gone. In fact, you've only just started walking into what was always meant to be. That longing you feel, that sense that there's more, it's not delusion. It's destiny. It's your soul remembering why it came here. So what now? This experience changed me. It broke me open and made me new. But it's not about me. It's about what you choose to do from here. You don't have to die to wake up. Every moment is a doorway. Every day a second chance. Jesus is real and he's closer than you think. Not just in church pews or ancient texts, but in your breath, your thoughts, your pain, your waiting. He's been whispering to you. This message? It's not random. This was timed. Call to action. If you've felt something today, if your spirit is stirring, Don't let that moment pass. Pause and talk to him, not with fancy words, just real honesty. Tell him you're ready. Tell him you're open. Tell him you want to know him. And if you've already started that journey, but feel lost or tired, he's still with you. Share this message with someone who needs to remember that heaven is real and they're not alone. Subscribe if you haven't already, because more messages are coming. And in the comments, tell me this. What's one moment in your life you knew God was real? Your story might just be the sign someone else is waiting for. You are loved. You are seen. And you have so much more waiting for you. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of